It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Kyle Benedict as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now here's today's Countywide.
Hello, welcome to Countywide. I'm Kyle Benedict. Today we're talking about wilderness medicine education, and with me today is an instructor with the Flagstaff Field Institute, Pete Walka. Thanks for making the trip down here from Flagstaff, right?
No problem, yep.
So, wilderness medicine, on your guys' website, flagstafffieldinstitute.com, there's a lot of great information about what you guys do, and especially out of Flagstaff and central northern Arizona in general. It seems like having an institute talking about wilderness medicine and education is what a better place to have an institute like that. So can you just tell me a little bit about your background as an instructor? Just tell me a little bit about how you became an instructor there.
Okay. I worked as a guide in Utah, whitewater rafting guide. Worked in Alaska as a guide for many, many years. And we had to take first aid classes to work as a guide. And most of the first aid classes were totally inappropriate because the premise was that you would call 911 and do what you could for 10 minutes, and we were doing trips that would last, 5 or 10 days. So you couldn't call 911 to begin with, and even if you could call 911, no one would come. So, you're taking classes that seem really inappropriate, and then I heard about this wilderness medicine institute, started taking classes, and it was awesome. It was totally enlightening that now we have the tools that you would need to manage someone in the backcountry. So even as a guide many years ago, I worked as a guide for about 10 years, started taking the classes, worked at a university up in Idaho briefly in the outdoor program there, kind of organizing outdoor courses, started working for WMI, the Wilderness Medicine Institute. Along the way, I got my EMT, moved back to Flagstaff. I've been in Flagstaff now about 14 years. I've maintained my EMT throughout, work as a paramedic full-time. So I've been able to kind of weave the work in the backcountry as a river guide, sea kayaking, etc., and the front country medicine, which really that's a great combination of skills then to be a wilderness medicine instructor.
So you've kind of seen the difference between medical emergencies, I guess, in just say around town with the fire department or as a paramedic, you said, and the difference with when something happens in the backcountry. The Flagstaff Field Institute, how did that get started?
So I love teaching wilderness medicine, and I started in Idaho, but when I came here there were no courses. So I just started offering the courses first as me as an instructor, and then I created the Flagstaff Field Institute to facilitate that. So the Flagstaff Field Institute kind of acts as the regional hub for the Wilderness Medicine Institute, which is part of the National Outdoor Leadership School, which is actually based in Wyoming. The Wilderness Medicine Institute teaches courses all over the world, but in northern Arizona, all of those courses go through the Flagstaff Field Institute. We've been doing that for about 10 years.
Okay. So you're kind of the founder of the Flagstaff Field Institute then?
I am the founder and only employee.
And only employee. Well, so from a student standpoint, what type of students are taking these courses? I mean, you guys have a couple different ones for some specific people looking to get certain things. There's a wilderness first aid, first responder, and an upgrade for medical professionals. We'll kind of discuss in depth those individual courses a little bit later, but what are just basically some of these students looking to get out of these courses?
There's a large number of people who are trying to work in the backcountry, who are working in the backcountry as river guides, rangers, fish and game. There's a huge group of those people that need to have medical training, where their primary job is not to provide medical help for people. Their primary job is to do other things, but they're in a setting where people can get hurt, and they do get hurt, or they get sick, and you need to be able to know what to do with them. So a lot of the students come from that sort of perspective, where they're looking for the skills to provide medical care in remote settings. But a lot of people just come because they spend a lot of time in the backcountry. Maybe they're hiking with their families, or hunting, or fishing, or they're Boy Scout leaders, or it's really applicable whether you're trying to be a pro or you just want it for your own knowledge.
So you would recommend these type of courses just for anyone who spends anybody amount of time out there?
In working as a paramedic, we do a lot of rescues, and most of those people are not on a professional trip. They're not with guides. They're just out with friends and family, and someone gets hurt, gets sick, and needs help. So I think everybody who goes into the backcountry should have some sort of training in wilderness first aid.
So now, as a student going through this, how much of the course is classroom and how much of it is actually out in the field?
So we do courses of between 2 and 10 days in length, and we try not to spend more than half of that in class. So we do need to spend some time in class to kind of explain the anatomy and physiology, explain how people get sick, how people get injured. But the idea with the course is that we're going to give you the skills to manage injuries and illnesses in the backcountry. And if you want to be able to do that in the real world, you need to practice. So we spend at least half the class outside practicing, going through scenarios, trying to make sure that people have the skills to actually provide care. It's definitely not a PowerPoint presentation in a dark room sort of course. They're very hands-on, very interactive courses.
So you sent over some pictures here about kind of showing some of the work that you guys do out there in the field. I mean, it looks like that you guys are handling a lot of common kind of scenarios. I mean, we've been recently on the news talking about, we just had a repeller that was hit by a falling rock and fell down. And, you look at some of these pictures that we're throwing up on the screen right now of these injuries, these major injuries. So is that kind of what most of the course is? I mean, how to deal with something, there's a wound right there. We're looking at someone laying on the stretcher there. If you're out in the backcountry, what are some of the things that you're supposed to do about that? I mean, say someone falls and smashes their head and they're bleeding from the head like that.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah.
So I can't really teach the class in 15 minutes, but there are a lot of different steps. We try and teach you a really comprehensive system for how to approach anyone who's sick or injured. And we start with the most important things like airway, breathing, bleeding, that sort of issue. Teach you how to protect people's spines, and then we teach you how to identify and treat the various injuries that, we have some pictures on the web, but we also have, there's an infinite number of ways people can get hurt. So we try and teach you a really good system where you can identify whatever it is. And then we teach you the background, we give you the hands-on skills to manage those.
So just kind of summing it up for the listeners and viewers there, you're basically, is it correct to say, you're basically teaching people how to treat any type of injuries when you're far, far away from any sort of medical. When you call 911, they're not going to be there in 10 minutes.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
I think the principles of first aid, many of the principles of first aid are fairly universal. Certainly we have a full-time curriculum director, we have a board of physician advisors that keeps our curriculum on the very cutting edge. But really we're trying to teach people how to use skills, use techniques with limited equipment, maybe taking care of patients for prolonged periods of time. So, someone trips, falls, breaks a wrist, say, in the front country, you call 911, ambulance is there in 10 minutes, it's not a big deal at all. In the back country, if someone falls, injures a wrist, injures an ankle, and they can't walk, say, or they can't paddle, or they can't climb, that becomes a major incident where even though it's a relatively minor injury, you're going to have to manage that for a long period of time. You're going to have to figure out how to splint it, how to help them move, how to help them hike, maybe call for an evacuation. So it's just much more complicated when you have fewer resources and longer distances to cover.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to take our first break. We're talking wilderness medicine education here with instructor and I guess founder of Flagstaff Field Institute, Pete Walka. This is Countywide. When we come back, we'll continue talking about this wilderness medicine education.
Orkin has pest control down to a science.
When your business chooses Orkin's Precision Protection Program, you get a tailored pest control program for your specific industry and environment.
Your business can benefit from over a century of experience, training, and scientific knowledge that define the Orkin man.
Maximum protection, minimum exposure, backed by one of the industry's most comprehensive guarantees.
Choose your locally owned and operated Northern Arizona Orkin and get more than an exterminator. Get an expert.
We taught him how to hit a baseball, how to hit a receiver, the strike zone, the net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back to Countywide. I'm Kyle Benedict, joined with instructor from the Flagstaff Field Institute, Pete Walka, talking wilderness medicine and education. That's kind of what the Flagstaff Field Institute is all about. So starting off, you talked about, right before we went to break, that there's, with these courses, you're not just teaching people how to deal with injuries out in the backcountry, out in the wilderness, but also how to be self-sufficient and resourceful when you don't have all of your nifty medical tools and stuff that you would need or have in a hospital or a doctor's office. But what are some of the more common injuries that you see when you're out there in the backcountry? What are some of the common stuff that people face?
You know, I think if you think about what's common in the front country, it's probably going to be common in the back country too. So people get minor scrapes, cuts, twist an ankle. Mm-hmm. You know, people are pretty good at limping to the trailhead with minor injuries. And our courses certainly address management of that sort of very common, fairly minor injuries. But I think, you know, even in the last 2 weeks in northern Arizona, we've had, you know, you were talking about the rappeller got hit by a rock. We've had a lightning strike. We had a heat illness death in Grand Canyon. We had an altitude illness patient on the peaks over the weekend. We had a broken ankle. Yeah. You know, I think those sorts of injuries do happen fairly commonly. So, you know, there's a wide variety, but all of those were significant enough that people needed, you know, rescues, needed assistance, needed medical care in the backcountry. Search and rescue responded, but it takes hours to get to those folks in many cases. So who's going to take care of them until search and rescue arrives? And even once search and rescue arrives, it could take hours to get them back out of there. So
you mentioned a lot of these courses are good just for anybody, member of the public who spends any amount of time outside, especially because I would think that if you're outside 10 miles from any trailhead or road or any structure, that if something major happens, someone breaks an ankle, falls and hits their head or breaks an arm or something, you know, the first thing would be panic that sets in. And if you don't have any training, you know, it seems like panic would kind of take over. And it's like, what do I do at this point? Call 911? Like you said, it's going to take forever for search and rescue to get out there.
Exactly. I think a lot of people do panic, you know, and they just don't know what to do. And they can't really help those people, which is, you know, honestly, we're often traveling with people who we know, maybe we're related to them, maybe they're good friends, and now someone who you know is really injured or really sick and you don't know what to do. That's a horrible feeling.
Yeah. So we're going to run through some of the courses here. They have. Let's just start off with the Wilderness First Aid. What is that course? What does that teach, and what are some of the students learning in that course?
So Wilderness First Aid is a 2-day class. We teach you the patient assessment system, how to identify illnesses, injuries, and then we just try and address like the most common problems. So we're going to teach you, wound care, minor musculoskeletal, try and talk about good decision making regarding evacuations and those sorts of things. We'll hit on some environmental issues. It's a pretty quick course, so we can't hit every topic and we can't go into great depth on every topic, but it's only 2 days, so it's a relatively small investment. A lot of people will start there. You don't have to take that course before you take the longer courses, but some people do like to kind of see what it's about, do the 2-day. It does give you enough to kind of do okay in the backcountry, but really the longer courses are going to equip you better for long-term care.
Like the Wilderness First Responder, can you explain that one?
Right, so the Wilderness First Responder is an 80-hour course over 9 or 10 days, much more in depth. So kind of the underlying foundation is the same. We need to teach you the patient assessment system, which is really the key element of any course, is teaching you how to figure out what's wrong, because otherwise you won't know how to fix it. So we spend more time on that, we practice that a lot, and then we go through a lot of different topics in great depth. We want to provide people with the background to treat illnesses, injuries, so that they don't have to just memorize lists of signs and symptoms and what to do. It's easier to learn if you kind of understand why things happen to people as they get sick or get injured. So we give them a little bit more background, and then we spend a lot more time practicing on the longer courses. A lot of scenarios. We have people work in small groups, we have people work in big groups. We'll even do like a mock search and rescue sort of scenario where there's 25 rescuers treating 5 or 6 patients, and you're all working as a big team, all the way down to like one person as rescuer, one person as patient. We just have a lot more time in the longer courses. We use a lot of the moulage, the makeup, to make the scenarios very realistic, sort of stressful.
I was going to say, those look really pretty realistic there.
We try to make them as realistic as we can. My goal is to equip people to be able to manage anything they find. And I don't want them to come upon an injury or an illness that is far worse than anything they ever had in class, or I didn't do a good job teaching them. So I try and make the makeup very realistic, the injuries, pretty bad in class, so that they feel confident and they feel like, it can't be any worse than we did in class. When it comes time to manage someone who's actually hurt, hopefully it won't even be that graphic or that crazy looking, and they'll feel comfortable taking care of them.
I mean, if you read about a hand injury in a book and you hear an instructor lecture about it, getting out there and actually seeing all the blood, like we had a picture that was up there, blood and just the hand completely messed up. Seeing that, if you've never seen that before or worked on something that looked like that, you might freeze up.
Exactly.
Imagine.
Even if you've read about it, it's totally different than trying to manage it. So, yeah, I really try and make the classes, the scenarios especially, as realistic as possible. So people are really, they're ready to manage whatever they run into.
And you also mentioned a recertification. How often do you have to be recertified?
We do recertifications every 2 years. So if you take a Wilderness First Aid class, you just take that same class every 2 years.
Okay.
If you do a Wilderness First Responder, that's the 80-hour, 10-day course. You just have to come back and do a 3-day course every other year. That includes CPR. And it's, again, just to make sure that everybody's hands-on skills are really up to snuff, so they really feel comfortable.
And then you also do Wilderness Upgrade for professionals. So would this be for like paramedics or EMTs?
Right, so you have to be at least an EMT already to do a Wilderness Upgrade for medical professionals course. In those courses we commonly have EMTs, paramedics, PAs, nurse practitioners. We get a handful of physicians in each class. But the idea is that you have some previous medical training, so we don't have to give you quite as much background on some of the anatomy and physiology. We can just jump right into the wilderness curriculum and how to apply the skills they've already have to a new setting where they don't have the equipment, they don't have the communications that they have in the front country.
So now, do you get a special wilderness certification for that?
Yep, we do. For all 3 course types, we'll give you a card, either Wilderness First Aid, Wilderness First Responder, or Wilderness EMT card. Okay.
Great. Well, we've got to take our second break, talking wilderness medicine education with Flagstaff Field Institute instructor Pete Walka. Good website, flagstafffieldinstitute.com. Easy phone number, easy website. Phone number 928-890-7199. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back here in a couple of minutes.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
That is a pretty good breakfast. You're not even eating.
Not hungry.
No? Why not? What's up?
Kath and I knew that Jenny'd been partying a bit. Found out she tried heroin.
Most people don't know what to say about drugs, but we do. Visit us at drugfree.org.
Hey, it's Ava, and this is Tess from Do Your Selfie, where we recreate the hottest looks from today's biggest music videos.
After cleaning out our closet, we have a lot of clothes we don't wear anymore.
Like this old pile of t-shirts.
It's not garbage, it's actually a new rug.
And to make it, all you need to do is cut, tie, and glue.
Cut the t-shirt into strips.
Tie the strips into knots.
And glue the knots to the bath mat. I love it. Give your garbage another life.
And recycle.
Orkin has pest control down to a science.
When your business chooses Orkin's Precision Protection Program, you get a tailored pest control program for your specific industry and environment.
Your business can benefit from over a century of experience, training, and scientific knowledge that define the Orkin man.
Maximum protection, minimum exposure, backed by one of the industry's most comprehensive guarantees.
Choose your locally owned and operated Northern Arizona Orkin and get more than an exterminator. Get an expert.
Welcome back to Countywide. Sitting down with instructor from the Flagstaff Field Institute, Pete Walka. A good website, flagstafffieldinstitute.com. Phone number 928-890-7199. So, Pete, just kind of to address it again, recertification, is that for everyone who took this course?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Everybody who takes the courses will get a card with an expiration date 2 years down the road.
Okay.
So,
now, this is even someone who works for maybe a different state agency and they take one of these courses?
Right. So, the state manages all people who are trained as EMTs, paramedics, folks who are working in a medical setting where their primary mission is to provide medical care. Then those are all regulated by the state. First aid training. These folks, most people who take this class, their intention is not to go and work as medical providers. Then really they need to get an EMT and work under the auspices of Department of Health Services. Okay. But for this, at that first aid level, it's separate from any sort of state requirements because it's not for people who are really providing medical care as their primary mission.
Okay, it's just kind of personal knowledge.
Personal knowledge, or you're in a setting where it's quite possible something could go wrong. So that personal knowledge, or you're working again as a river guide, your primary mission as a river guide is to get people down the river, have fun, cook, clean, whatever.
Yeah.
Same for park ranger or fish and game or Boy Scout leaders. We need to have the skills, the knowledge, the ability to manage these things, but we're not going into the backcountry just to find people who need help medically.
Okay, great. Well, we have just about a minute left here in the show, but real quick, you can enroll online, right?
Absolutely.
I saw on there,
yep.
flagstafffieldinstitute.com. Again, also more information. A great website. Really quick, if we just run down some of the costs for these programs, Wilderness First Aid, how much is that?
So Wilderness First Aid, I have a class coming up September 26, 27. It's $235 for the weekend.
Okay.
The Wilderness First Responder courses, those tend to fill up really far ahead of time. My August course has been full already for a month. So I've got those starting January. I'll do one every month, and those are going to be $735 for the 80-hour course. And then the Wilderness Upgrade, I just do one of those every year, every March. That one's going to be $725.
Okay, great. Again, more information, flagstafffieldinstitute.com. Pete, thank you for being here today.
You bet.
That's going to do it for Countywide today. We'll talk to you next time. That was Pete Walka, instructor with the Flagstaff Field Institute. I'm Kyle Benedict. Countywide, we'll see you guys next time.